The gift bag was pristine white with gold tissue paper peeking out the top, the kind of presentation that screamed money and intention. My future mother-in-law placed it in my hands at my own bridal shower while 42 women watched, most of them strangers who'd known her for decades and me for barely a year. I reached inside and pulled out the first item. A gym membership, 12 months prepaid to her private fitness center. The second item. A cookbook with a glossy cover titled, Cooking for Your Husband, The Modern Wife's Guide. And at the bottom, nestled in the tissue like a final blow, a handwritten note on cream-colored stationery in her flawless cursive. You'll need these more than a wedding band. The room erupted in laughter. 42 women, including my own mother's friends and her country club circle, all laughing at the woman about to marry into their world. My future mother-in-law stood there beaming like she'd just delivered the most generous gift imaginable. My fiancé wasn't supposed to be there. Men don't traditionally attend bridal showers. But he walked through that door, picked up the gym membership, read that note, and spoke 6 quiet words that made his own mother cry in front of every woman she'd ever tried to impress. But that's not where this story starts. It starts 14 months earlier, the first time Vivian Whitfield looked at me and decided I would never be enough. Welcome back to Quiet Justice Tales. I'm Morgan, 31, a nurse practitioner in a small North Carolina town. This is the story of how my mother-in-law spent 14 months trying to control my wedding from every possible angle, and how one bridal shower gift bag finally ended 36 years of her reign. If you've ever sat at a family gathering and swallowed everything you really wanted to say, stay for this one. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. Sometimes the people who should welcome you are the ones who work hardest to push you out. I grew up in Brevard, North Carolina. Population just over 12,000 on a good day. My mother worked as a dental assistant at the only practice in town that accepted Medicaid patients. My father left when I was 9 years old. He packed a duffel bag on a Tuesday morning, kissed my forehead, said he'd be back by dinner, and we never saw him again. My mother didn't talk about it. She just picked up extra shifts at the office and worked Saturdays at a nail salon to make ends meet. From watching her, I learned 2 things that shaped my entire life. Nobody is coming to save you, and you can cry after all the work is finished. I started working at 18. Night shifts at the Quick Mart on Asheville Highway, 11 at night to 7 in the morning, for nights a week, while I took classes at Blue Ridge Community College during the day. I'd study pharmacology between customers buying cigarettes and gas at 3 in the morning, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead while I memorized drug interactions. My first savings account had $412 in it. I remember the exact number because I'd never seen that much money with my name on it. Nursing school took 4 years. I graduated magna cum laude, not because I was smarter than anyone else, but because I didn't have the luxury of failing. By 28, I was a nurse practitioner at Mountain Family Health Clinic in Hendersonville, 30 minutes from Brevard. I saw 30 patients a day. Ear infections, blood pressure checks, diabetes management, the kind of work nobody films documentaries about but everybody needs. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment on Church Street. Small kitchen, 1 window that caught the morning light. Every dish, every towel, every piece of furniture in that apartment was bought with money I earned. I didn't have much, but everything I had was mine. And I'd learned early that the only person who'd built my life was me. What I hadn't learned yet was what happens when someone decides your life isn't built to their standards. Daniel Whitfield walked into my clinic on a Thursday afternoon with a 2-inch gash on his left palm. He'd been fixing a fence on his family's property and the wire snapped. He needed a tetanus shot and 4 stitches. I cleaned the wound, gave him the injection, and sutured the cut while he sat perfectly still and asked me about my day. Not politely, genuinely. Most patients want to talk about themselves. Daniel asked what time I'd started my shift, whether I liked the work, and if I'd eaten lunch. I hadn't. He came back the next week to get the stitches checked. The wound was fine. He asked me to coffee. Daniel was a corporate attorney at a firm in Charlotte, an hour and 40 minutes east. He drove to Hendersonville every weekend to check on his family's property and see his parents. He was 33, quiet for a Whitfield, and had the kind of steady patience that I recognized from my own mirror. Our first date was at Blue Ridge Roasters on Main Street. He ordered black coffee. I ordered the same. We talked for 3 hours. He didn't mention his family's name, their house, or their money. Not once. By the third date, I realized Daniel was the first man who asked about my work and actually listened to the answer. By the sixth date, I told him about my father leaving. He didn't try to fix it or explain it. He just said, "That must have been hard." And then he changed the subject because he understood that some things don't need to be unpacked. They just need to be acknowledged. I was falling for him. And I'd have kept falling quietly and happily if it hadn't been for one thing. Then I met his mother. The Whitfield house sat on a hill on the west side of Hendersonville. Colonial style, white columns, circular driveway, the kind of house that makes you check your shoes before you walk in. Daniel brought me for Sunday dinner 3 months into dating. Vivian Whitfield met us at the door. She was 58. Tailored blouse, pearl earrings, handshake like a job interview. "So, you're a nurse," she said, looking at me the way you'd look at a stain on a tablecloth. "That's very." She paused. "Selfless." The pause was the weapon. Selfless was the sheath. Inside 20 minutes, she'd mapped my entire background with surgical efficiency. My mother's job, my father's absence, my apartment on Church Street, my car, a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. When I mentioned my mother was a dental assistant, Vivian smiled. How nice. Gerald's mother was a surgeon. Gerald was Vivian's husband, 61, a commercial real estate developer, built like a man who used to work with his hands and now paid other people to do it. He sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone, and said almost nothing. Vivian had arranged the seating so I was at the far end of the table, 3 chairs away from Daniel. Patricia, Daniel's older sister, 36, sat between us. She had the same pearl earrings as her mother. Dinner was filet mignon, asparagus, and a silence so thick you could butter it. When Daniel and I left, he apologized in the driveway. "She's like that with everyone at first." I said, "She's your mother." "I can handle it." I meant it. I'd handled worse than a woman with pearl earrings and an opinion. What I didn't account for was that Vivian Whitfield didn't have opinions. She had campaigns. Patricia showed up at my apartment 2 weeks later. Unannounced. "Just stopping by," she said, already scanning the living room like a home inspector with a grudge. She took photos. For the family group chat, she explained, holding her phone at angles that captured the water stain on the ceiling and the IKEA bookshelf I'd assembled myself. That Thursday, my phone started buzzing with Patricia's suggestions. A text at 7 in the morning, "Daniel prefers his shirts folded, not hung." Another at noon, "He doesn't like garlic, just FYI." A third at 9 at night, "Mom thinks you should consider highlights. She has a great stylist." Each text was signed with a smiley face, as if a smiley face could disguise an order. I showed Daniel. He sighed. "That's just Trish. She means well." I wanted to believe him. Then Gerald called Daniel that weekend. I could hear Gerald's voice through the phone. Not loud, just steady. "Your mother just wants to be included." Is that so much to ask? Gerald's contribution to every Whitfield conflict was the same sentence, rearranged slightly. "Your mother means well. Your mother is just excited. Your mother wants what's best." He was the director of logistics for Vivian's operations. He supplied the funding. She supplied the strategy. I started to see the architecture. Vivian controlled. Patricia enforced. Gerald funded. And Daniel was the product they were trying to protect. On her way out of my apartment that day, Patricia paused at the door. "You know, Vivian's last favorite for Daniel was a pediatrician from Asheville. Didn't work out, but she was lovely." She said lovely, the way Vivian said selfless. Like a compliment wrapped around a warning. Daniel proposed 11 months after our first date at Blue Ridge Roasters. Same table, same black coffee. He didn't get down on one knee. He slid a ring across the table like he was passing a note in class. A simple solitaire on a thin gold band. I loved it. I loved him. I said yes before he finished asking. We called our families that night. My mother cried happy tears for 6 minutes straight. Vivian's response was silence. Then, shouldn't we discuss this as a family first? Daniel said, we just did, Mom. I said, yes. That weekend, Vivian hosted what she called an engagement celebration at the Henderson County Country Club. She'd booked the private dining room, ordered champagne, and invited 35 of her closest friends. She did not invite my mother. When I asked about it, Vivian said, oh, I assumed she'd be uncomfortable in this setting. My mother, who'd spent 30 years making nervous patients comfortable in a dental chair, would have been fine. But I let it go. I shouldn't have. At the party, Vivian introduced me to each of her friends using the same formula. This is Daniel's fiancé now, I suppose. Every introduction felt like a reluctant admission. Patricia took a photo of my ring and posted it in the family group chat. The caption, sweet, very dainty. I knew what dainty meant in Whitfield vocabulary. It meant small. It meant cheap. It meant not enough. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, the ring is perfect. I squeezed back. The ring isn't the problem. I was starting to understand something about the Whitfield family. Every event was a performance. Every performance had an audience. And Vivian was always the director. What I didn't know yet was how far she'd go to control a show that wasn't hers. Wedding planning started the next week. Daniel and I wanted something small. Outdoor ceremony at Wildberry Creek Vineyard, 45 minutes from Hendersonville. 80 guests. Farm-to-table dinner, wildflower arrangements with cornflowers and black-eyed Susans, the kind that grew along the roads in Brevard. Within 7 days, Vivian had called the venue. Not to ask, to add. 40 additional guests, all hers. Country club friends, church committee members, the school board chair's wife, people I'd never met and never would. She called the caterer and changed the menu. Farm to table was too casual. She ordered plated filet mignon with béarnaise sauce. She replaced the wildflower arrangements with white roses and eucalyptus. She did all of this without telling us. I found out when the venue manager emailed me a revised invoice. $14,000 more than our original budget. I called Daniel. Your mother added 40 people and changed the menu. He was quiet for a long time. Then let me talk to her. He talked to her. She cried. She said she was just trying to help. She said planning Daniel's wedding was a dream she'd had since he was born. She said Morgan was being rigid. Daniel came back to me and said, I think she'll back off now. She didn't back off. I checked the venue's online portal the next morning. The guest list had been changed again. 3 more names added overnight. The login credentials had been shared with Gerald's email. They had access I didn't know about. That was the first time I realized Vivian wasn't helping. She was replacing me. Replacing the wildflowers with her roses. Replacing the 80 people who mattered with 120 people who didn't. And if I didn't stop it, she'd replace the bride too. I changed the venue password, removed Gerald's access, called the venue manager, and told her that no changes were to be made without my direct authorization. Voice confirmation, not email. Vivian found out within 48 hours. She didn't call me. She called Daniel. I understand, she told him, her voice smooth as church organ music. It's your day. I'll step back. She did not step back. The next Saturday was my dress fitting. I'd chosen a bridal shop in Asheville, a small place run by a woman named Helen who'd been fitting brides for 30 years. I'd picked a simple A-line dress, clean, elegant, no beading. It cost $800 and it made me feel like myself. I was trying it on when Patricia walked in. "Oh, I was just in the area," she said. She was not just in the area. Asheville is 45 minutes from Hendersonville and the shop was on a side street with no foot traffic. She had a folder inside printouts of 5 dresses Vivian had selected. Ball gowns, cathedral trains, price tags ranging from $8,000 to $12,000. "Mom thought you might want to see some options," Patricia said, spreading the printouts on the counter. Helen looked at me. I looked at the printouts. Then I looked at Patricia. "I already chose my dress, but thank you." Patricia gathered the printouts slowly. "She'll be disappointed. I bought the A-line that afternoon. $800. My money, my dress. I wore it to my wedding 6 months later, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever put on. Not because of how it looked, but because nobody else chose it for me. But the dress fight was just a skirmish. Vivian's real campaign was already underway. I just didn't know it yet. I want to pause here because I know some of you are sitting there thinking, "Morgan, just tell her off already." I hear you. But I was still trying. Still hoping Daniel could reach his mother. Still hoping 14 months of patience would earn me a seat at that table. What I didn't know was that Vivian had already decided I'd never sit there. The emails were already being sent. 3 months before the wedding, small things started going wrong. The florist called on a Monday morning to confirm the change to all white arrangements. I hadn't requested any change. I'd ordered wildflowers, cornflowers, black-eyed Susans, sprigs of lavender. Mrs. Whitfield called last Thursday, the florist said. She said she was coordinating on behalf of the couple. I called the photographer next. Same story. Rebecca, our photographer, had received an email requesting a new timeline. Ceremony moved from 4 p.m. to 2 p.m. I assumed you and Daniel discussed it, Rebecca said. I called the caterer. They asked if they should proceed with Mrs. Whitfield's menu revisions. Revised menu. The farm-to-table dinner I'd planned was gone. In its place, a 3-course plated dinner with filet mignon, lobster bisque, and a dessert table featuring a 5-tier fondant cake I'd never agreed to. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone and made 4 more calls. The DJ had received a new playlist, all classics. Every song Daniel and I had chosen removed. The baker had been told to change the cake flavor from carrot to vanilla buttercream because carrot cake was not elegant enough. The rental company had been asked to swap our wooden farm tables for round banquet tables with white linens. Every single call came with the same explanation. Mrs. Whitfield called. She said she was coordinating on behalf of the couple. I locked the venue accounts, but I hadn't locked the vendor relationships. Vivian hadn't needed the venue password. She'd gone around it straight to every individual vendor using a voice so smooth and so authoritative that not one of them thought to verify. I traced the vendor calls. Every one of them came from the same phone number. Not Vivian's cell. Gerald's office line at Whitfield Properties. She'd used his business phone so the calls would look official. A real estate company, not a personal number. Professional. Authoritative. Calculated. Daniel confronted his father that Sunday. I wasn't there, but Daniel told me every word. Gerald sat in his leather chair in his home office, hands folded like a man being deposed. Your mother means well, Gerald said. She's just excited about the wedding, Daniel. Dad, she changed our florist, our caterer, our photographer's timeline, our cake, our music, our tables. Gerald looked at his desk. Is any of that really worth a fight? Daniel stared at him. She erased every choice Morgan and I made. Gerald looked at his desk. Weddings are stressful. Everyone gets emotional. That night, Daniel sat on the edge of my couch with his head in his hands. I'm sorry, he said. I'll fix this. I looked at him. I loved this man. I loved his patience, his decency, his belief that his family could be better than they were. But I'd heard, I'll fix this, before. You've said that 4 times now, Daniel. He looked up. His eyes were tired. I know. I wasn't angry. I was something worse than angry. I was tired in the same way he was. I recognized the pattern clearly now. Gerald enables. Daniel apologizes. Vivian continues. A loop so old it had worn grooves in the floor. At midnight, Gerald sent Daniel a text. Don't upset your mother over flowers, son. Pick your battles. Daniel showed me the text. I read it twice. Then I turned off the lamp and said, she's not going to stop. You know that, right? He didn't answer, but he didn't disagree. 6 weeks before the wedding, the calls started. Not calls to vendors this time. Calls to my guests. My college roommate, Tara, called me on a Wednesday afternoon. Hey, I got a weird call from someone named Vivian. She said the wedding was postponed and I'd get a new date. I felt something cold slide down my spine. The wedding isn't postponed. Tara went quiet. Then Morgan, who is this woman? I called Lisa, my co-worker at the clinic. Same story. Vivian had called her the day before and said the venue had changed. The wedding was moving to a smaller location and it was going to be intimate family only now. I spent that evening on the phone. 8 of my 12 invited guests had received calls from Vivian. 8. Each one had been told a different version of the same lie. Postponed, relocated, downsized. All designed to remove my people from my wedding. She kept every one of her 40 guests on the list. Not one of her church friends got a call saying the wedding was off, only mine. I reconfirmed with each person, explained the situation as calmly as I could. 6 said they'd still come. 2 had already made other plans. Tara had booked a work trip. My nursing school friend Diane had committed to her niece's birthday party. Gone. My mother-in-law was erasing me from my own wedding. Not all at once. Guest by guest, call by call, like removing stitches from a wound she wanted to keep open. I stood in my kitchen that night, phone on the counter, and thought about walking away for about 6 seconds. Then I thought about the $800 dress hanging in my closet. My dress, my choice. And I decided that Vivian Whitfield would not get to unmake what I'd made. Daniel drove to the Whitfield house the next morning. I stayed home. He told me every word when he got back. He walked in without knocking. First time he'd ever done that. Vivian was in the kitchen arranging hydrangeas. Mom, he said. You called Morgan's guests and told them the wedding was off. Vivian set down the hydrangeas. She blinked twice. Then the tears came. Not slow tears. Instant, full mascara-preserving tears. The kind of crying that's been rehearsed so many times it activates on command. I have given everything for this family, she said, her voice cracking at exactly the right frequency. I hosted your graduation party. I organized your father's 60th birthday. I chaired the fundraiser that paid for the church roof. And now you're telling me I can't even help with my own son's wedding? She escalated. Your grandmother Rose never let me in either. I thought you'd be different, Daniel. I thought my own son would be different. Patricia appeared from the hallway, already there, already listening. Danny, Mom just wants to feel included. Morgan is being very. She searched for the word rigid. Daniel sat there for 40 minutes while his mother cried and his sister built the case that I was the problem. When he left, he called me from the driveway. His voice was flat. Maybe we should let her have a few things. I was quiet for a long time. I looked at the wall of my apartment where I'd hung the wedding timeline, the original one, the one Daniel and I had made together on my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and 2 cups of coffee. Daniel, I said, she didn't ask to have a few things. She took them. Sunday dinner at the Whitfield house. Everyone performing normally. Filet mignon, asparagus, Gerald on his phone, Patricia reporting on her children's school activities, Vivian presiding. I excused myself to use the restroom. On the way back through the hallway, I stopped. A framed photograph I'd walked past a dozen times, but never really looked at. Vivian, young, maybe 22, standing at what had to be her own wedding reception. You could see the edge of a white tablecloth, champagne glasses, a spray of flowers behind her. She was smiling, but it was the smile of someone trying very hard to look like they belonged. Behind her, an older woman, Grandma Rose, I realized, Gerald's mother, was turned completely away, talking to someone else. Her back to Vivian at Vivian's own wedding. Gerald found me standing there. He was heading to his office, his permanent escape route. He stopped and looked at the photo. "Mom," he said, meaning Rose, she never thought Vivian was good enough. Said she wasn't the right fit for the Whitfield family. Took Vivian about 15 years to stop trying to win her over. I looked at the girl in the photo. I recognized her. Not her face, her posture. Shoulders slightly curled, chin slightly lifted, trying to take up space while feeling like she had no right to it. I'd stood like that at Vivian's dinner table 3 months ago. Vivian became Rose. The girl who was never accepted grew into the woman who accepts no one. A cycle so old the frame had yellowed. I felt sorry for that girl in the photograph. But that girl had 36 years to choose differently. 36 years to break the pattern. She didn't break it. She perfected it. Understanding why someone hurts you doesn't make the hurt less. Knowing why someone hurts you doesn't make the hurt optional. For weeks before the wedding, a Tuesday, I was charting patient notes at the clinic when my phone buzzed with an email notification. Rebecca, our photographer. The subject line, timeline update. Whitfield Meadows wedding. I opened it and my stomach dropped. Rebecca had accidentally forwarded an entire email chain to me instead of replying only to Vivian. 47 emails. 4 months of correspondence. I read every single one during my lunch break, sitting in my car in the clinic parking lot with the engine off. Vivian to the florist, please disregard the wildflower order. White roses and eucalyptus only. Vivian to the caterer, the farm-to-table concept won't work. Please see the revised menu attached. Vivian to the DJ, I've attached a new playlist. The previous selections were youthful. Vivian to the venue manager, we'll need to adjust the seating chart. I've attached the updated guest list. Please note the additions in yellow. 23 guests I'd never approved. The ceremony timeline moved twice. The cake flavor changed. The napkin color changed. The rehearsal dinner location changed. And at the bottom of every email, CC, Gerald Whitfield. He wasn't just silent. He was coordinating. But the email that stopped me cold was from 3 weeks earlier. Vivian to the caterer, please remove the vegetarian options. They won't be needed. My mother is vegetarian. Vivian knew that. She'd asked about it at the first dinner. Any dietary restrictions in your family, dear? My mother had answered honestly, and Vivian had used it. 47 emails. 4 months. CC, Gerald. And 1 line about removing the vegetarian options because my mother's presence wasn't part of the plan. I sat in that parking lot for 20 minutes. Then I went back inside and finished my shift because the work doesn't stop because your hands are shaking. I didn't call Daniel that night. I went home, opened my laptop, and went through every email in that chain. All 47. I created a folder. I screenshotted every message. I cross-referenced each vendor change against the original agreements Daniel and I had signed side by side. Original plan, Vivian's version. 14 pages. I color-coded it. Green for what we'd agreed to, red for what Vivian changed. There was a lot of red. Then I picked up the phone and called each vendor personally. The florist. I reconfirmed the wildflower order, gave her a new password for any future changes, and asked her to reject all requests that didn't include that password. The caterer, same. The DJ, same. The venue manager, same. Every account relocked. Every vendor resecured. Every back door Vivian had walked through closed. The last call I made was to Rebecca, the photographer who'd accidentally forwarded the chain. "I'm so sorry," Rebecca said. "I thought you knew about all of it." "I do now." Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Whitfield is very thorough." "Yes," I said. "She is." I saved the folder to my desktop. I labeled it with today's date and the word evidence. Then I closed my laptop and made myself dinner. I ate slowly. I washed the dishes. I swept the kitchen floor. The folder sat on my desktop for 3 days. Not because I was hesitating, but because I was thinking. Vivian had spent 4 months building a shadow wedding behind my back. She'd used Gerald's office phone. She'd CC'd him on every email. She'd removed my mother's meal from the menu. This wasn't about flowers or cake flavors. This was about erasure. And I needed Daniel to see it. Not hear it from me. Not read a summary. See the full scope with his own eyes. 3 days later, a Friday evening, Daniel came to my apartment after work, still in his suit. I'd made coffee. I set his cup on the kitchen table next to my laptop. "I need you to read something." He sat down. I opened the folder. 47 emails. 14 pages of comparisons. I didn't narrate. I didn't explain. I let him read. He read for 20 minutes without speaking. His coffee went cold. I watched his face go from confusion to recognition to something I'd never seen on Daniel Whitfield. Cold, quiet fury. He got to the email about the vegetarian options. His jaw tightened. "She removed your mother's meal." "Yes." He kept reading. He got to the CC line. Gerald Whitfield on every single email. He closed the laptop slowly. His eyes were red. Not crying. Past crying. "I didn't know." "I know you didn't. That's why I'm showing you. Not telling you." He was quiet for a long time. The apartment was so still I could hear the refrigerator hum. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. I looked at him. This man I loved. This man who'd spent 33 years trying to keep peace with a woman who used peace as a weapon. "I don't want you to do anything yet," I said. "I want you to know what's real. And then I want you to decide what kind of family you want." Daniel stayed at my apartment that night. He didn't call his mother. He didn't call his father. He sat on my couch and read those emails 2 more times. And I could see something shifting behind his eyes. The last load-bearing wall of "she means well" cracking under the weight of 47 documented lies. I know what some of you are thinking. Why didn't you just cancel the wedding and walk away? I thought about it for about 6 seconds. But I didn't build my life by running from hard things. I built it by showing up and doing the work. Vivian had 47 emails and a 14-month head start. I had a folder and the truth. And sometimes the truth is the only weapon you need. 2 weeks before the shower, Vivian called Daniel. "I'm hosting Morgan's bridal shower at the Laurel Room. I've already booked it, sent invitations, arranged everything. It's my gift to her." The Laurel Room was a restored barn-turned-event space on the outskirts of Hendersonville. Exposed beams, Edison bulb string lights, farm tables. Vivian had hosted 3 committee events there. It was her stage, her territory, her lighting. The guest list, 42 women. 38 of them were Vivian's country club friends, church committee members, the school board chair's wife. 4 were mine. Jenna, my mom, Tara, and Lisa. Daniel told me over the phone. My first instinct was to decline. Then I stopped. I thought about the folder on my desktop, the 47 emails, the 4 months of secret coordination. I thought about who Vivian was. A woman who needed an audience. Who needed control. Who needed every room arranged in her image. A woman who couldn't help herself. If I said no, she'd tell everyone I was ungrateful. She'd be the wounded mother-in-law, and I'd be the difficult bride. But if I said yes, she'd have a stage. And people who need a stage eventually show the audience who they really are. Tell her yes, I said. Daniel paused. Are you sure? I'm sure. Let her host it. Let her plan every detail. Let her fill the room with her people. He was quiet for a moment. You think she's going to do something? I looked at the folder on my desktop. 14 pages of red. I think your mother can't resist an audience. And I think 42 witnesses is plenty. 3 days before the shower, I printed the folder. All 14 pages. Emails, vendor comparisons, the line about removing the vegetarian options, the CC to Gerald on every message. I put everything in a manila envelope and set it on my kitchen table. Daniel came over after work. I slid the envelope across the table the way he'd slid the ring across the coffee shop table a year ago. Your mother is going to do something at this shower, I said. I don't know what exactly, but she will. When she does, you'll have a choice. He looked at the envelope. What's this? Everything you need to see. Not a summary. Not my interpretation. The actual emails, the actual changes, all of it. He opened the envelope and spread the pages on the table. He had already read the digital versions, but printed, laid out side by side, original versus Vivian's version, green and red. It looked like what it was. A blueprint for erasure. He read it again, every page. Then he looked at me. What do you want me to do? I want you to be nearby on Saturday. Not at the shower. That's not your space. But close. And if Jenna texts you, come. He nodded slowly. The coffee shop across the street. 5 minutes away. And if she doesn't do anything, then we have a nice shower. And I say thank you. And we move on. He folded the pages back into the envelope. He held it against his chest for a moment like a man holding something heavy he'd been avoiding. Then I'll be at the coffee shop by 10:30. He didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. But it wasn't anxiety keeping us awake. It was clarity.